Thank you. Further discussion. Representative Ivory.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I remember I was first called into a church leadership position, and I was excited. I wanted to help my neighbors, and I was excited that we would do great things. And when problems would come up, as problems do, I would come up with these creative solutions. We could do this, or we could do that, or we could try this to solve that problem. And the leader would just sit back, and finally he would say, Brother Ivory, I have an idea. Why don't we check the handbook? Why don't we check the handbook? Representatives, we have the handbook. We have the handbook. Men that we believe were raised up by God, who said by divine providence they established a more perfect union with the Constitution. And in that handbook it says that we have the power. We, this body, state legislators, we have the constitutional power to maintain the system. Think of your first official act. First official act, I remember standing right there. And I remember raising my hand and solemnly swearing that I would uphold and defend the handbook. And I wondered what power I had as a state representative to uphold and defend the Constitution. It's right there. It's right there. In fact, George Washington, the father of the country, said, if in the opinion of the people, the distribution or modification of the constitutional powers is ever in any particular wrong. We've heard a lot of discussion about how the distribution and modification of the constitutional powers is in almost every particular wrong. He said, if in the opinion of the people they're ever in any particular wrong, let it be changed by an amendment in the way the Constitution designates. But let there be no change by usurpation. Don't just do it. Don't just let the federal government do it. That's how free government is destroyed. I agree with my good colleague from Salt Lake. Governing by executive order is not appropriate on the right or the left. That's how free government is destroyed. The Supreme Court acting like the supreme being is not okay on the right or the left. That's how free government is destroyed. In order to secure our liberty, that we could flourish, that we could create our highest order. We're the only government in the world that says we're endowed by a creator with unalienable rights, life, liberty, property. And with those, we can create in a godlike manner new songs, new buildings, new businesses. And we create if we're secured in those things. And they said to create that protection, we first divide government. We have to divide government, and then we have to limit government. And Madison, in the very first Congress, introducing the very first amendment to the Constitution under Article 5, said the state legislatures will jealously and closely watch the operations of this national government, and the state legislatures will be able to resist with more effect every assumption of power better than any power on earth can do. Because the state legislatures are the sure guardians of the people's liberty. If we fail to act, how do we answer to those that the good representative presenting the bill put life, fortune, sacred honor on the line? We can redeclare independence right now with a document, not a musket or a pitchfork. We can reestablish the divisions and limits of power right now without a war and a battle under the rule of law. Those that complain this is too dangerous, I got an email that said, using the Constitution is the worst thing since sin. Triple exclamation point. That's the hyperbole that's been out there. The worst thing since sin is to use the Constitution. I think not. The handbook is the answer. It's right there. How should we suppose that divine providence that established this Constitution will continue to bless and favor us if we don't use what he gave us? It's like a drowning man praying and the boat comes. They say, no, I'll wait for God. Here's the life preserver. I'll wait for God. This is the liberty preserver right here. In 1967, there was a group, in fact, the same group that is opposing this today. There's a group that was pushing the Liberty Amendments, and the Liberty Amendments would have banned the United States from engaging in business. It would have eliminated the 16th Amendment. It would have eliminated foreign engagement in the United States. And they presented this bill on the floor in the Utah legislature, and I've got a news article that says Governor Rampton said that Ezra Taft Benson, who was the former Secretary of Agriculture, prominent leader in the United States. Now, I don't know what the rules were in 1967. If Mel Brown were still in the body, he could tell us what it was like back then. But it says that Ezra Taft Benson was allowed, when the debate began, Ezra Taft Benson was permitted the privilege of the floor in the legislature to speak in favor of the Liberty Amendment, and afterwards sat on the floor. Throughout the debate, Rampton says, making himself at home. Justice Scalia said the founders inserted this alternative method of obtaining constitutional amendments because they knew Congress would be unwilling to give attention to many issues the people are concerned with, particularly those involving restrictions on the federal government's own power. They foresaw that, and they provided the convention remedy. If the only way to get to a convention is to take the minimal risk, then it's a reasonable one. Otherwise, we cede all power to Congress. Representatives, it's in the handbook. It's in the handbook. And we swore the oath. And so decide or don't decide, we'll be accountable for what we do because we are constitutional actors. We are the sure guardians of the people's liberty. And as Washington said, if in the opinion of the people it's in any particular wrong, use the handbook. I encourage your support.